Well, thanks so much, Jen, for agreeing to be pandaed. Some people report it's painful, but we don't think it is.
Yeah,
Uh,
pandification is fantastic.
yes,
I'm
uh,
actually really excited about this. Can I tell you a quick story about pandas?
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I went to China back in the or I guess the mid to late 1990s, and we had a tour guide, and the tour guide was taking us all over, and all the school kids would come up and want to take pictures and, follow me and try to pet my hair. And finally, the tour guide said to us, and it was just two of us, she said, "You're more popular than the panda bears." And so pandas have been something that I always get a lot of, just like little gifts and things because the story stuck.
Very cool.
I
Yeah.
like it.
So, as so by the way, where did you go in China? Where you
I
were?
did Beijing and Xi'an. So,
I went to China in 2016, and the only time I've been, and it was a combination Viking river cruise,
Mm.
basically a disaster, and and a land cruise that started in Chongqing and went to Chiang and then Beijing. That was excellent. Chiang, I thought,
mm,
was fantastic.
yes.
I would love to go back there. The
Hmm.
reason why the river cruise part was not anything to write home about was that we just sailed up the Yangtze, which is this industrial river. So it was us and the phosphate barges.
What are
And
you doing?
exactly. And usually these river cruises, like in Europe, stop once or twice a day at a charming city. And there were, I think, 2 days where we didn't stop anywhere
Oh,
because there was nowhere to stop until we got to the Three Gorges. And so what they inflicted on us were like, and I'm not making this up, PowerPoint presentations
So you wouldn't look outside.
by the crew, like on some aspect of Chinese history or culture. So this is
It
very
reminds me of once right after college, I went on a trip to Europe because the thing to do was my grandmother said you should go on a trip to Europe after college, and she gave me the money to do it. So I went with my friend, and we decided to go to Bangor, Wales. And we got to Bangor, Wales, and we're staying in a
I don't
hostel. And
even know Bangor
no, no
Wales.
one does. And so we get there, and several people are looking at us interestingly. And then finally, these two kids our age come up to us and say, "So everyone's asking why you're here." We're like, "Oh, we just thought, it's by the water and it's Wales, and we didn't want to go to the big city." And they're like, "No one comes here. You understand, right? Like we think it's very odd, and we just
Yes,
assume that you're up to some no good." And I'm
you're right, of
like,
course. So, Jen, sorry, when I was thinking about this morning, I was trying to remember the first time we had a significant conversation. And my memory is that our first, I think we may have already met, LinkedIn, but I don't know that we had a real exchange until we started talking about Daniel. And I'm not going to say his last name because I've never met Daniel. I know you know him really well,
hmm.
but it strikes me that he may not be the kind that, well, that he isn't the kind of person that wants all of this public attention. So,
Right.
and you know Daniel better than I do. So,
Hmm.
how would you describe Daniel to Julia?
"Well, now I'm intrigued." Okay.
Yes. Well,
And also, I don't know how you two met, and I'm worried that Jen doesn't want to talk about Daniel. So now I have all this codependency going.
okay. Well, I
That's
mean,
what's going on for me.
there you go. So, Jen,
Yes. So Carmen and I actually met through Amazing Women in the intelligence community.
that's
And I
right.
think this conversation actually happened at South by Southwest, is where
Mm.
we were. And you were drawing literally on a napkin. And it was right before the book was going to come out. And you were
Hmm.
talking about
Rebels
how,
at work.
yeah,
Yes.
Rebels at Work. And what you were talking about sort of the layout of the book and some of the key interesting factors. And yeah, our conversation about Daniel. Daniel is one of these minds that you talk to him and you think that the world has shifted because what he talks about is everyday things, but from a different perspective.
Yes.
And it really opens up how you perceive, how you react, and how you interact with people and him in particular.
Yeah,
Ooh, I
and let
like
me
this guy.
bring it kind of right to a substantive point. Uh, he would write blog posts or long posts on LinkedIn, and I believe he's still in the Air Force. I looked to see
He's
on his
retired
profile.
now.
Oh, he retired. Okay.
Mhm.
And
Or
but he
about to retire. About to
or it's
retire.
about to. So
Yeah.
he's a enlisted or a non-commissioned
Mhm.
officer.
Oh, I know
And
Daniel.
do you know Daniel?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I
Yeah.
may have mentioned Daniel to you
Yes,
early
and then
on.
I met him, and then we actually worked to get we met each other in person in
Okay,
Colorado, and
well,
yeah, okay.
we still aren't going to say his last name
No, we
because
aren't, but
no.
now I know who
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. So Daniel wrote a piece that just like you said, Jen, changed my perspective. And it was the story. He was, obviously subject to Air Force rules about deployment and so forth. And he has a family. And at the time, he had a daughter who had, I think, significant health issues. And so he was scheduled. Excuse me. He and his family were scheduled for another move, Air Force move. And he went. This is how I remember it. He went to the person who ran those things and said, "Could I just get a 6 month extension or whatever it was?" Because it would help his daughter. And the person said, "No, it's policy. It's policy. You have to move." And so the whole piece, the bottom line of it was, why can't we change the policy? What is it? Why are we stuck? And I think he maybe finally found someone who was courageous enough or had enough vision to go, oh, we can change the policy. And
Where
so
did it come from?
then that to me gave me the definition of innovation, which I've used ever since. And oh, look at that, a cat sighting. I think that was a cat.
That was a cat. Yes.
Which is, people are always asking you when you talk a lot in the innovation space, which I did maybe 10 years ago. Well, what is innovation? Can you define innovation? And you get stuck in all these semantic traps or conceptual traps. And so my definition, thanks to Daniel, has always been innovation is the opposite of policy.
I
Whatever your
love that.
policy is, innovation is the opposite of it. Jen.
Amen.
Yeah, he worked for me, and I loved having him around because he was so passionate about what he did, and he made everybody around him think differently. And everywhere he went, I was excited to see the things that happened. And as you mentioned, it was like 10 years ago was the innovation ecosystem when it was really bubbling up
Yeah.
across the government in particular. And there was a group that sort of all hung together and tried to be as forceful as possible and push the policy because policy does root you where you don't necessarily want to be planted. And we
Nice,
have to think
nice.
through like how do we create window boxes maybe instead that can be moved around rather
Oh,
than having things planted in the ground forever.
I
also
like that
nice.
metaphor.
Love the metaphor.
Yeah.
So we're at that magic moment when we ask you to introduce yourself, Jen, because
Because that
now,
usually takes about 15 minutes.
yeah, now it's becoming a little bit routine, so we're going to have to shake it up. But
Yeah.
how would you like to
How would
introduce
you talk
yourself?
about yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am a person who doesn't like to talk about themselves. I don't think anybody does. But I
Oh
think
no, there are
Oh,
many people who do.
oh, really?
believe
Okay.
we
You you are
not
mistaken.
not to cast aspersions or
Yeah.
comment on any of our previous pandas, but they could neatly be divided into two types: those who want to talk about themselves and those who are like you.
Yeah. So what I'll say first is that I'm a mother of two. I have
Mm.
a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and my 19-year-old has Down syndrome and is a super cool kid and
Oh,
very athletic and a wonderful human being who makes me laugh on a daily basis because he just says funny things. And I have a 16-year-old daughter who is the joy of my life and feels like we're actually really good friends, which is weird to say for a 16-year-old.
cross your
But
fingers.
I know
Yeah, give it like 2 seconds.
we hang out together, just very helpful and probably one of the most empathetic people I've ever met. And it's probably
Wow.
because of her brother. Um,
And maybe
So
because
and
of you.
what are their names?
so my oldest is Landon and my daughter's Ray.
Mm.
And they get along, but they're siblings, right? So they go to their corners in the evenings, and when they go to their corners in the evenings, I find other things to do. But they're the joy of my life, and I love spending time with them. When I'm not doing that, I'm really passionate about really national security and making sure that what people are working on, it matters. Um, it's one of these things that when I spent 25 years in the Air Force and as an intelligence officer, focused on emerging technology. And when I
And you
retired,
went to the Air Force Academy, right?
I did. I went to the Air Force Academy, but I went to the Air Force Academy not to become an Air Force officer, it's like whatever. It was to play basketball. And I didn't really know anything
Oh,
about national security or intelligence or the military until I got there. I had my grandfathers were doctors in World War II. And I had an uncle who was in Vietnam, but that was it. We did not have a military background or a government service background at all. And
and
I
by the
got
way, your last name
Sovada.
is that your
It's
married
my
name or is it your
No, it's
maiden
my
name?
ex-husband's name. Yeah, it was my married
Okay.
name. My maiden name was Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever
So
played basketball with Sue Gordon?
we have never played before. We've talked about it, but we haven't actually played. I think she'd probably crush me.
Oh,
She's
I think so too, but
yeah, she's good at everything she does.
yeah, but I was wondering.
Yeah.
So anyway, you went to the Air Force Academy kind of for a lark, and you
hmm
became interested in national security.
Yes. I thought I'd do 5 years and leave and then go on and do something else, but I ended up 25 years later looking around going, how am I still here? And when I retired, I wanted to still make a difference. And so I went to a early stage startup that was focused on helping the agency with figuring out how to do software development and cloud migrations and all of those sorts of things. And we got acquired by a bigger company. And then I was sort of in this like, what do I do? Where do I go? And I other companies came to me, but I realized that I didn't want to sell ads. I didn't want to sell the next skincare product. There's things that just didn't matter to me and didn't give me a reason to get up. So continued on in the national security space and trying to find technologies that make a difference.
Very
Wonderful.
cool.
And so you retired from Air Force?
I did, yes.
And when was that?
Maybe 10 years ago?
It's only been since 2019, so it's only
So
Okay.
been
seven. So it's 7 years. Yeah.
almost seven. It
Yeah.
was 6 in November, so yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And now do you freelance or what do you do now?
I do a couple different things. I do some freelancing things because I still like to have my fingers in different types of technologies and I like to help young companies and young founders learn how to work in the national security and government space and help them think through how to grow and how to provide value. But I work full time at a company called Clarity, which is an operational technology cybersecurity company. So we protect your critical infrastructure, your buildings, data centers, transportation. So think of all of the switches and knobs and programmable logic controllers and your elevators.
Do you do
And
water?
we do water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that valve, making sure that enough chlorine goes into your water to make it safe to drink,
Mm,
that's what we protect.
Yeah.
And
wow.
so I run
That's
their
cool.
public sector. Yeah.
So I just want to get back to Ray and Landon.
Yes.
And this is a question that we've been asking, or I've been asking for about, I don't know, 3 days. But I'm sure you read to your kids.
All the time.
And what was your favorite book to read to your kids? Not necessarily their favorite book for you to read, but the one that you really got a lot of meaning out of reading it to them.
So there's a couple books. The one book is called Madeline,
Oh
and
yeah.
Oh God,
it,
Madeline. Oh,
it was my
By the
favorite.
way, been getting great answers, so
yeah.
we love the question.
That was my favorite book as a kid too. Were you about
Yeah.
to say that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
like
my favorite
all
book
the
as a
girls were
kid.
in line, but like
Uh-huh.
not Madeline.
Mm-hmm. And two straight lines, and one of them was Madeline. Yeah, exactly. So I read that book a lot. And then there was The Giving Hand, was my
Ah,
other favorite book. And this is about a family of raccoons. It's about a mother and her raccoon child and how she kisses him on on his palm. And the idea is that that's the area that goes to the heart. And so when you leave to go to
Mm.
school, you're not forgotten and that your family still loves you even when you're not with them.
Wow, what a wonderful story. I mean, these well, just before we jumped on, I was just glancing at LinkedIn and someone was reacting to the horrible Epstein story and trying to make sense of it in terms of what it says about human nature.
Hmm.
And I just read the summary and that's all I read, but the summary said, but that is not the only human nature,
Yeah.
yeah.
what we see there. And your story about the raccoon and raccoon nature
Yep.
made me think it's a brilliant example that we're getting lost, I think, in assuming that there's something universal
Mhm.
about the stories or the behaviors that we're seeing in this horrible example, in this
Yeah,
admittedly
sociopathy.
horrible
Yeah.
example of human nature.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
actually think too, I mean, like with the Kissing Hand book, it in other books, it goes back to what you learn oftentimes when you're little and what you're exposed to as well. And who and what you talk about when you're growing up.
well, and
And
how your parents help you manage trauma. Like
yeah.
I got a divorce when my son was 5, only one child, and he would go back and forth. And I used the idea from The Kissing Hand. Is it The
Mhm.
Giving Hand or The
The
Kissing Hand?
Kissing Hands. Yeah, I
I
said
never
both.
read it to him, but I used the idea. And so I said, there's a connection between us even when you're at your dad's house. I'm totally friends with his dad, everything, it's not like a really good dad, but there's a connection between us. And he said, yes. He said, it's a golden thread.
Mm.
And
Um,
he just made that up out of whole cloth. And I said, yes, it's a golden thread. Sure. It's just a golden thread. And you can always pay attention to that. And I feel like there's these sort of secret wisdoms that parents, and I won't say mothers, I know that mothers do this a lot, but I'll just say parents generally, because I've seen fathers pull these out too, that just emerge in the relationship between the child and the parent when the parent is desperate to help the kid deal with something that's like difficult. And these wisdoms just kind of emerge. And that's a part of human nature that we don't talk about as much because it's not an addictive meme that we can then get angry about and get outraged about and then feed our addiction for being right and outrage. And and I'm delighted, I guess I'm just saying, I'm delighted that we're talking about this right now.
yeah, it's great. So, can I ask you a question about Landon?
Of course.
And I so I apologize in advance if the question seems, naive or even slightly obnoxious, but uh, what I want to get to is kind of his own awareness and self-perception of himself.
Hmm.
What can you say about that?
I think that Landon is a very self-aware kid. He has a lot of capabilities, and I believe that he'll be mostly independent when
Mhm.
he's done with school. Um, this is really interesting because one of the things that we talk about at home is labeling and labels.
Yes, and that's
And
one of the reasons I was reluctant to ask that question or tried to be
yeah,
careful in how I asked it.
exactly. So we've tried for Landon's whole life to not have him labeled, not have him
Yes.
labeled as having an intellectual disability or having him labeled if they were to say that he had autism or he has whatever it is. Landon's just Landon. And
Right.
he has his own abilities and he has things that he does really, really well and things that he does not. And so I find it fascinating because my daughter is in the year of, or in the group of kids that all want to label each other. You know,
Mhm.
are you, what are you? What do you do? Who do you, what do you like? What do you don't like? And it's, you get labeled. And so she and I had a conversation about like, why are you trying to label yourself when we've spent 19 years trying not to label your brother because of the impact a label could have on him? And so instead of thinking about a label, think about like who you are from the core of yourself and how you want to be portrayed and how you want to portray yourself and how you want people to perceive yourself.
Right.
And so going back to Landon knows that he has challenges. Landon also knows that he's a cool kid. Like he's one of those that when the girls are, talking to him, he like gets a little shy and a little, he'll talk to him, he'll go up to him and say hello. He's smart and he knows he's smart, but he knows that he also is very manipulative and that if he feigns that he doesn't know how to do something, you'll do it for him. Like the kid knows how to tie his shoes. And he could tie his shoes really fast when he wants to, but when you have to get out of the house quickly, he pretends like he has no idea how to tie his shoes. So, it's like it's pure manipulation. And sometimes I just sit there and wait and I'm like, you're gonna have to do it today because I'm not doing it. And then he'll ask me like, would you tie my shoe? Sure, I'm happy to tie your shoe. But it's really interesting that you asked that question because I think many people see kids with disabilities or adults with disabilities because he's an adult now at 19 and they don't think of them necessarily as humans and how they feel.
Yes.
It's only about how they make others feel.
Right.
And so it's a really important point to show that they're people and they have feelings and they want to be loved and they want to be told that they did a good job and that they're smart and they're funny and all those
Right.
things.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
just like a regular 19-year-old. I mean,
right.
I've been doing some work with non-speakers or minimal speakers who have mostly been classified as autistic, but certainly have apraxia, difficulty controlling and moving their bodies. And the thing that most strikes me is that here are these people who have these fantastic minds that are just different. Those minds are different than what we typically think of as, the right way to think or whatever.
Mhm.
But if we can look at what is actually going on, it's really phenomenal. And so then the other thing I get is that their developmental age is right on, like the ones in junior high are being just like junior high kids, you know. And um, so but I think we try to see from the outside, like someone with Down syndrome, like they have a particular look that we then stereotype as, not smart, not capable, has these particular capacities. I certainly wouldn't think of a Down syndrome person as manipulative, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be smart to be manipulative, right?
Exactly.
And so it's really interesting how the outside predicts for people the inside. And then that's also true for women in culture. That's also true for Black people. I mean, that's true all around. And it's exciting. Once again, I'm excited about this topic of conversation.
Yeah. Well, when you were saying that he's, Landon is, very self-aware, that made me think how many of us go through life for decades being unaware
hmm
of some important aspect of how others perceive us and or how we project ourselves. And so I think it's a blessing to be
Yeah.
self-aware earlier rather than later. And I know when I was at CIA, I remember we were redoing our leadership courses because organizations are constantly redoing their leadership courses, which should tell you something. That's a clue. But anyway, and so, they were interviewing a lot of people saying, hey, what do you think is the most important thing that we should get across in the leadership course. And I think the most important thing I told them was to be self-aware. People who are going to have more direct responsibility for other people, because we all have responsibility for each other, but still, really need to understand themselves at a level of fidelity that is greater than other people. And I know, leadership's a huge thing in the military. Huge.
Yeah, it's the number of people that think that they're self-aware and think that they're good leaders is astonishing. And I would say even though I've had a ton of leadership opportunities, I still learn every day when I'm in a leadership role or when I'm not in a leadership role about what I like and what I don't like and how I want to change or how I need to adapt to a situation. And I think there's people out there who think that they're a leader and that's it, and they don't need to change and that they're good at what they do and they'll always be that good leader. And being self-aware, understanding where you fit in and understanding the situation is a skill
Yeah,
that we all need.
Well, I know that I'm sorry, Julie, I'm talking a lot, so.
Please don't apologize.
Huh?
Please don't apologize. You're
Okay.
You're
Well,
pandaing with excellence.
okay, all right. Well, so I know that you're aware of the documentary that is going to come out soon by Iron Butterfly Media, The Power We Hold, that profiles women who've had national security careers. And I'm in that documentary. Sue Gordon, Tish Long, so a whole bunch of women that are in that documentary. And I'm obviously all for it. But, or as Julia would say, and my one concern or a concern I have is that I hope that we don't get perceived as heroic. Because I think that you can't depend upon heroisms. I don't think that's a good solution.
Ooh, because that's part of like the great man model.
Or great woman for society. Yeah. So your reaction, Jen?
As somebody who's in the military or was in the military, and people still to this day say thank you for your service.
Yes.
It feels awkward to me because it's not about that. It was about my intrinsic motivation to do things that kept us safe and served. And so I think that maybe that's where you're coming from a little bit, is that you don't want to be, because now your life is out there and the things that you've held dear are now exposed. Because I know the conversations you had were very, you pulled a lot of threads and you talked about a lot of really interesting and intense and sensitive things. And so it's like people may see you as heroic, but in reality, it was all from the core of who you are rather than for a purpose or to be recognized.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But wait, the hero's journey, like I'm gonna Joseph Campbell this, the hero's journey, right? Is not really about that sort of folk idea of hero as someone who's canonized or someone who's about their ego or whom other people revere because of their ego. The hero's journey is really about going inside to the core innate motivation and greeting that and becoming aware of that and seeing the dark side and seeing this is how I could fail. This is how I could fail myself and others. This is how I could not be authentic. And I'm going to work towards not that and move towards authentically expressing my inner motivation. That's the hero's journey because it's the real hero. In other words, it's a hero of a life. So each person is, if they can feel satisfied about their life, the model is that they were the hero of their life story in that they were able to do that. But that is not the same thing. I think what you're objecting to is this sort of outward heroism, almost like being an influencer or something.
Well, what I'll just speak for myself. Yes, that is part of what I'm objecting to. I'm also objecting to the idea that it's somebody else's responsibility to make things better. It's everyone's responsibility to make things better. And, you know, in the documentary, there just isn't enough time for everybody to talk about their beginnings or their childhood or, you know, how they were shaped. But however life treated us and whatever outcomes we had, our lives began. This sounds just stupid, arrogant to even say it this way, but we all had humble beginnings, you know. It's just, you know, so it's everyone's responsibility to make the world to contribute in whatever small way they can, whatever way they can, and we all contribute in small ways. Historically, there are very few people that you can go, oh, now that was a medium-sized contribution, you know. Right? Jen.
Yeah, I think we go through phases in our life where our contributions, it's almost like a wave, where sometimes it's a great contribution to society, sometimes it's a great contribution to your family, or maybe you're on the downswing because life is just really hard. And I think we have to be able to give ourselves some grace for when we are in those hard swings. I had a hard swing where I had just started at my last company, and we had just spun out of Google. We were a brand new company out of Google, had all of this hoopla around us, and my mom got sick in a different state. And I didn't have a lot of help. So I was trying to raise two kids, split time with their dad, get back and forth to Wisconsin to take care of my mom, and end up, like putting her in assisted living and, all of the things, selling all our household goods, getting rid of, whatever it is, and a startup and a new company. And it was rough. It was rough. And there were times where I'm sure I was not good for my kids. I'm sure I was not pleasant with my mother, and I'm sure I was not helpful to my company. But, you dig yourself out of it, and away you go, and you learn from it, and you're better for it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, grace. Give yourself some grace. I would say that even beyond self-awareness, giving yourself some grace or forgiving yourself for failing is a really important leadership skill.
Yes, it is. And remembering your failures. To this day, I'm sure this is true of all of us, that when you think about a moment where you really dropped the ball, you just wince. You just go,
So it's cringy.
And this could be from 20 years ago, and you still go, oh, you still don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, I have that. This has actually come forward quite a bit lately. And the reason why is when I have a 16-year-old daughter who sees mom as perfect. Mom, you've got a great job. You had a great career in the Air Force. You have really great friends. You have a nice home to live in and all
You
of
have
these
good
things.
hair. You have good hair.
Yeah, well,
You
thank
do have
you.
good hair, yes.
I appreciate the hair. There's no way I can live up to what you've done. And I say, whoa, 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 hold on a minute. Let's go back and let's talk about some of the things that have happened over the last 50 years of my life. And you'll see that there are a bunch of stumbles where I broke my nose when I hit the ground because I didn't have my hands out. And, it's a learning journey, and you are not expected to know it all right now. Like,
Right.
live life, enjoy it, understand where you are, and know that you'll continue to have ups and downs.
Yep.
That's a real problem with very competent moms. I also have had this conversation with my son. You can be seen as so competent and super competent that they're almost like, I don't know if I can do that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then you have to like remind them, do you know about this and this and this?
Yeah.
That's a really good tack.
Yeah, these points just made a little synapse close in my brain. So these generations growing up right now, let's say starting with Gen X, it's not so true about the boomers. These are the first generations who potentially grew up with their mother and their father representing new types of role models.
Yeah.
So, like the way Ray describes you, Jen, you're really with it. You had this great Air Force career. You are a startup star. Oh my God, And I don't, the Leave It to Beaver generation could not have thought of their mother in that way. So
Right.
maybe the kids' perception of their father hasn't changed so much, although that's possible. But for sure, it seems to me that the kids' perception of the mother in a traditional family structure can be really different than what it used to be.
Hmm.
And that affects their choice of mates, I can say. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say much further, but all I know is that my son likes strong women.
Yes.
You know, and that changes a whole culture.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's I don't know that anything changed the culture more powerfully than the birth control pill.
As the Catholic Church predicted,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I know that so you were like Jen, like the chair of the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum, or
Yes.
tell me
Yep.
exactly what that was.
So the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum started in 2005, 15 maybe. I can never remember my decades anymore. It tells me I'm getting old because I can't remember what decade I'm in and what decade it was. But it was started by a group of young junior officers. So, sort of the captains, Navy lieutenants, really is where they were. And they wanted to build this organization because they felt like their voices weren't being heard from within inside the institution. And they had a lot of ways that could make things easier, that could make things more efficient and effective. And it was kind of across the spectrum. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to reform how we go to war. It's like, how do we do acquisition? How do we do talent management? How do we think about technology and systems and even like systems thinking and all sorts of other things along the way. And I got involved by sitting at a table with somebody who was the executive director at the time. And I just fell in love with the organization because the collective voice was so much louder than the one voice of a general officer or somebody
Mhm,
else.
mhm.
And the ideas that they brought together were really innovative and thoughtful. And so joined the organization, then became a part of the executive team and tried to continue on with the theme and to inspire, connect, and empower people that they can make a difference. And you don't have, it's not about rank. It's not about position. It's not about how much money you have. It's really about your thoughts and your ideas.
Right. Now, does that
Wow.
still exist or?
It does. It still exists.
Ah,
Yes.
great. And
Wow.
and
What I mean, the thought that occurs to me is inspire, connect, empower would be such an interesting interpretation of ICE. That would
whoa.
like, wouldn't it be cool if ICE was
You had to
inspire,
go
connect,
there. You have to
empower?
go there. But
Wow.
no, it's a really interesting point. Now, since you work to help companies understand government and presumably try to get them to figure out how to help government innovate, the opposite of policy, thanks
Hmm.
to Daniel. What are the kind of the key points, from a whatever height you want to be at, that, it might be just simple practical things you can do, or it could be very high strategic things that help companies advance innovation in government.
Yes. So I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a couple low level ones and I'll give you a couple high
Good,
level ones.
good.
I think on the low level side is knowing your customer. And
Yeah,
it's not always about the senior person in the room or the senior person at the organization. Too many people think, hey, I'm going to go to the four-star general or I'm going to go to the SES and I'm going to get what we need and get what we want. When in reality, we all know that it happens at lower levels
right.
more often than not. And so build the base, understand the pain points, know the use cases, and focus on outcomes.
Right,
And don't go in trying to sell your widget. Go in and tell them how you're going to solve their problems.
right, right,
And then things turn out better. And also say no if they ask you to do something and it's outside of your mandate, and tell them that you're not the right fit if you're not the right fit. And
right.
tell them, maybe give them an alternative and say, well, my friend over here has this company that does X, Y, or Z. So that you build that credibility and you build yourself into more of a consultant thought leader who has cool technology that solves my problems.
Yeah, that's so
Question.
very hard for salespeople to do, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to say no.
Yeah.
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 It's also very indicative of high integrity. If someone says no to me, I'm not the right fit, I like adore them and want to hire them for something else. So I think that's a great tactic. But I'm curious, Jen, what you think of the it's not necessarily new. It was a Biden administration policy that's continuing under the Trump administration, which is for the DOW, Department of War, to only work with um, companies that are already developed and commercialized. In other words, my concern about this, and I still don't have never heard a good answer for it, is then how do we stay on top of truly emerging tech?
Good
If,
question.
right? I mean
Mhm.
that we would like to remain secret. How do we do that if it already has to be commercialized?
Yeah, I think it's a problem. And what I'll say is that I think it's happening in a different ways. Because if you look at the Andurils and the Palantirs, it's commercial tech, but it really is defense tech. They're not gonna take some of the Anduril stuff and like use it on the commercial side. It's completely for defense tech. The challenge I do see is in funding and budgets, that some of the technology, especially if you're building something, manufacturing something, that you actually have to have a lot of money to do that. And you don't get that money unless you have support, advocacy, and a customer, typically. And so they usually try to find somebody on the commercial side who will give them their initial funding. But now we've got defense innovation and defense ventures and others that are trying to help on the defense side. The challenge is like, where do they intersect? Where do they kind of go into a parallel stream? And where do they diverge? And if we focus too much on things that are commercialized, I think we lose out on that early technology. And DARPA can't do it all. IARPA can't do it all.
No.
The national labs can't do it all. The incentive structures are very different, and how they focus on technology is different. If DARPA within 2 years you don't have a project that's ready to go, it's pretty much dropped on off the shelf and they move on. So I think we do have to look at how do we continue that basic level of research and support it so that we can continue to be the best at what we do.
When,
Yeah,
when,
amen.
when I thought about innovation, I was in the government, and I lived through any number of failures or badly, uh,
Poorly conceived.
yeah, thank you, poorly conceived approaches to technology. I was there in the aughts, from like 1995 to 2005. I was, I think, identified as one of the most innovative people at CIA around technology and analysis, and like not having anybody else to talk to. Every single person would try to get on my calendar, and I would say, that's how it seemed to me, and I'd say, I really don't know anything about that. I'm really sorry, but I cannot help you. But one of the things that then I started advising, people who work for me, how to think about innovation in government. You mentioned funding. That's what made me think of this. And I said, look, in government, to my knowledge, this is still the pattern. You're highly, highly incentivized to spend your budget at the end of every fiscal year. And usually in the late spring, people in the budget offices identify the programs that are not spending their money at the correct rate. And that money how much of that money exists, gets identified. and then you are, through whatever process your organization has, able to make a claim on that money. So that means if you're an innovator in government, if you're a GS-15 and you've got an idea for something that's practical, that can be done in 2 years, or at least, gotten off the ground in 2 years, you have to have that sitting in your file cabinet, ready to go. You update it every year, and you just wait for the call for end of year money. But you got the deck. You've, to the extent that it's legally possible, you've talked to some people, you kind of know who might be able to do it. What do you think about that, Jen?
I think you're right. From a government perspective.
Yes, from the government perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I also think that along the way, you can still sort of sprinkle breadcrumbs across the organization and agency. Like, wouldn't it be nice if?
Yes.
And do some of that. But unless you get somebody to put a wedge into your budget for you, you've got to show value first before they'll invest in it.
And when that call comes out for ideas for end of year money, you have maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah.
To get in there and get your idea approved and funded. Maybe 4 weeks. It's, so there's no way you can start from scratch.
No.
It's kind of like you got to have the frozen pie crust in the freezer, and all you got to do is roll it out.
It's just like the world of science. I mean, so we're taught as graduate students, as you're getting your PhD, you're helping your advisor write grants and learning how to write grants as a result to get funding. And what you're learning is half of the stuff as you read the grant, as you're writing it, you're like, wait a minute, half of the stuff we've already done. And it's like, shh. You have to have half the stuff ready to go out to publication so that they'll think you're productive during the time, because of course you're always publishing on old stuff because it takes forever.
Right.
So yeah, all the tricks.
So Jen, we got about 10 minutes left in our allotted hour. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? You pick the domain.
Ooh.
You can say about whatever domain, what we've talked about. Family, we've talked about human nature. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about innovation.
I am optimistic. I'm going to pick human nature.
Okay.
I think that the world we live in has gone into several cycles lately from a humanistic perspective and a human nature perspective. And I think that we are going to emerge more united and more focused on what we believe in, what we want to do, and what we stand for, and what we tolerate.
Yeah.
Wow. Yay!
We got one.
You made Julia very happy.
I think that's true.
I hope it's true. I'm a very optimistic realist, or a very realistic optimist, one or the other.
Yeah, me too.
But I certainly hope you're right. I mean, here I am. I'm 71, so got a lot of miles on those tires, and I would say I am less optimistic than I was when I was 50, but still optimistic. It just seems more, it's going to feel that much sweeter when it turns to the light.
Actually, I really appreciate that comment, because sometimes you don't appreciate things that happen in the world because it's just too easy.
Right.
And I think when there's times of strife and challenge, you do appreciate it more.
Yeah. The contrast is key. Yeah. There's nothing better than being sick, and then the first day you start to feel better. It's like, I can do things. I have energy.
Right.
Yeah. I think that we could only go up.
So anything else you want the pandas to know?
I have truly appreciated this conversation and enjoyed it. And I love what you two are doing, and trying to push the envelope on conversations that most people don't want to have or haven't had.
Well, thank you. Yeah. That's and for the record, we'll say it again. These are unscripted. They are what they are at the moment. So if you like them, subscribe. We almost never remember to say that, but this time I did.